Let's discuss Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, and how the film uses comic book panels to reinforce the story beats that they accompany, as well as how those panels accentuate character growth in particular. Credit or inspiration for the idea, by the way, goes to Patrick Willems for his essay on realism, as well as this tweet. Just to be clear up front, my definition of comic book panels has a lot of wiggle room. In this moment, the panels are picture-in-picture, whereas 5 minutes later in the film, the still very comic booky panels are done in a split-screen effect. They also, in this moment, have a torn paper effect on the border, while the ones in this moment have clean and straight borders. In short, lots of play within the definition of panels. With that out of the way, the question: how does Spider-Verse use comic book panels? They take the place of inserts and close-ups. And you'd expect that panels are used for this. They're used whenever the storyteller wants emphatic shorthand. And that makes sense. You're putting boxes around areas of the screen and saying, hey audience, look here. Just as with inserts and close-ups, you're highlighting a moment and asking the audience to infer and understand that what they're being shown is important, as well as why it's important. When they're used this way, panels can tell a funny slapstick gag faster, or ratchet the tension of an action scene more efficiently. They're in the Spider-People's intro montages, which, on paper, serve to introduce characters, but because the intros are so repetitive, they also double as shorthand for saying that all the Spider-People have gone through similar experiences. That way the audience already understands Peter B. Parker when he says as much later on.
We've all been there. You know, for me, it was my Uncle Ben.
For me, it was my Uncle Benjamin.
Comic book panels are used twice to exposit a plan. First, when explaining how to get into the research facility, and later when figuring out how to sneak through the gala, both times allowing an easier summary. The second time, the summary is entirely visual. You don't even need a voiceover. They're used in a scene transition that immediately switches into a montage, elegantly changing locations while covering the resolution of a lingering plot point about the goober in less than 15 seconds. Finally, the filmmakers use this emphatic shorthand during major moments in Miles' growth throughout his story. Miles isn't the only character to grow, but he is the only character whose growth is accompanied by panel effects. They show up when he gets bit, when he experiences his powers for the first time, when he takes his first steps, when he gets challenged by his peers, when he's struggling to keep up with the rest of the Spider crew. Here in particular, the rest of the heroes stack in from the right, but Miles enters from the left. This is a great composition that reinforces the story point that he's not quite as coordinated with or as prepared as the rest of the crew. To contrast, Peter B. Parker also grows, but his growth is signaled by swinging next to Miles. First here, when he recognizes and lampshades their relationship, and then much later, immediately after he realizes he might want kids someday. Definite character growth, but it's signified totally differently. Back to Miles. There's this incredible moment where he becomes Spider-Man, but let's put that to one side and look at a scene before and a scene after that. First, before. There's a moment of growth where he gains a good measure of control over his powers, but the panel effect here is notably not a presentation flourish. It's part of the physical space in the shot. The effect is that what looks like a panel composition is also acting as a physical barrier. The tension in this scene, the separation of father and son, will remain unresolved, explicitly because Miles can't control his powers by the time his father exits. Second, on the other side of Miles' leap of faith, and after the final battle, his dad speaks to him again, and here, it's an explicit split-screen panel, but the effect is the same, and it's an effect constrained to this before and after moment. Only in these two moments are the panels used as barriers in a frame's composition, in addition to emphasizing or underscoring storytelling. This scene resolves the tension that was left in the first, and the composition matches the story. The shot on Miles' dad holds, the divider wipes away, and Miles appears in front of his father. After his growth, Miles resolves the tension. It's Miles' growth that is central to this divide, and it is Miles, newly empowered, who appears in the same frame and discards the barrier between father and son, and so the two share a frame, united. Thanks for listening. If you liked this, I encourage you to like this video, and if you want to see more, you should subscribe to my channel. If you have comments or suggestions for future videos, leave them in the comments below, or find me on Twitter at CriticalDroll. Thanks.
But we're just gonna have to agree to disagree.